Hello guys, this is Pinwash 36, and today's video is going to be a little bit of a update sort of on my current weathering project. I've been kind of busy with my university work as usual, so I haven't had enough time to give you guys many full tutorials lately. But I do have a full weathering tutorial in the works on this one. It's going to be like one of those hour-long videos. And today I figured I would just kind of do a little discussion, just kind of tell you guys how it's going so far, and briefly talk about all the techniques and products I've been using, and just kind of talk about my mentality for weathering a little bit, because people like to hear that sometimes. So in the frame right now you can see every single product I've used on this tank so far. I believe I might be missing like one or two paints, but I don't think so. Basically I got my paints over here for the base painting and the chipping. Oh, actually I should have a brown in there. Do I have a brown? I think I don't have it on hand, but I also used XF72 for part of the track, so I don't have that on hand right now, but this is what I use for the painting here. I got my varnish, I've got my grease effects here, my Pinwash here, and my dusty effects over here so far. So let's just get into it. Move some stuff out of the way and I'll just start talking, I guess. So right now you can see that the tank is basically completely weathered on the upper surfaces. I still have yet to do the lower hull weathering effects, which is like the mud and the dust, but essentially I've got the whole upper area complete. I don't think I'll do much more up here, except for after I do the dust effects lower down. I'll probably bring a couple of those effects up over the fenders a little bit up on the sides, but I've already used some dusty oil paint colors to get some dust up there, of course, and what I'll do is I'll pick pigments, which I already have on hand, pigments and nail products for the mud and stuff that match the oils I've already picked. And that way I won't have to do much blending on the later stages because I've already got the oils up there, which are like the same color. So to begin, what I did was I base painted the model. I chose my, I gave it like kind of like a primer coat of NATO Black by Tamiya, just like an overall coat. And then I painted the tracks with a mix of half and half of that and XF72. And that was like the base coat. And then I went in, actually I might have used this color instead. I really don't remember. I used basically a really dark gray color. Either one of these two. Gave like an overall primer coat. And then I went in afterwards and did a mix of mostly XF63 with a little bit of this white and a little bit of medium blue. So it's probably like 3 parts this to maybe 1 part each white and blue approximately. My mixes are kind of usually just approximate. I just kind of do it by hand and just throw them together until it looks good. And that gave me my Panzer Gray color. And what I did on this one was actually picked a lot darker Panzer Gray than I usually would pick. For example, I did a Panzer 3 recently, or not recently, probably a couple years ago honestly, because I don't finish enough models, but one of my last completed projects was a Panzer 3, and for that one I picked a blue or a Panzer Gray color that was a lot lighter than this. And it looks kind of cool, but if you look at photos, Panzer Gray was pretty dark. You can see here that it's almost as dark as the actual black on the tires, which is Tamiya NATO Black. So I mixed that up, and that was my Panzer Gray. It was pretty dark when I first put it on there, but honestly at this point I think it was like the perfect color. So I painted the Panzer Gray. Then for the markings I used the DN Models masks that I'm always using. You know, this sheet here. I've only ever used the little one size of crosses, but someday I'll use some larger ones or something like that. Those are from DN Models. Mitco sent those to me a very long time ago, and I've been using them. I'm very grateful for that. They are very good masks. So I used those to paint the crosses, which are the only markings on this tank. There's one on each side and one on the back. And I basically just put the white mask on there, paint it with flat white, and then I put on the black half of the mask and use NATO Black. Really easy, no need to do a varnish beforehand because I just paint that on right over top of the Panzer Gray color. And then there's obviously no issues with decal film showing through or anything like that, no silvering. I just paint on, I don't have to worry about, filling with it to make sure it doesn't silver and stuff. That's why masks are a lot better. That was applied, and then I went in and gave it chipping. So for the chipping, I mixed up a lighter color, a lighter gray color. I just used 63 and 2. I didn't bother mixing any blue in with this. I just went with these and mixed them up to make a slightly lighter gray color. And then I did some very refined chipping effects. Like I tried with a darker gray color, I also tried being a little more realistic in choosing less chipping effects. So I'll zoom in a little bit. And the chipping effects are so minor that they're mostly gone actually because of all the dust, but you can still definitely see them in areas like around the hatch there. Most chipping was on the roof actually, so there's some there. Also, maybe if you look at the edge of that bin on the back there, you can definitely see some of the chipping because there's less dust in that area. Yeah, and then you can probably see a little bit more of it on the back here. The most visible spots are on the top of the superstructure of the boxes here. So with the chipping, I first did the overall chipping effect with that lighter gray color. In some areas, like around hatches and stuff, I did it by brush. In other areas, I did it with the sponge, so I took a piece of foam sponge and then kind of like lightly, almost like dry brushed on some of the same gray color to get like an overall wear and tear chipping effect. So maybe you can see that kind of like right about there, and also right about there. You can see like the sponge chipping makes kind of like a more wear and tear effect, but it's less precise. So I do that on the flat surfaces, and then if I want to do some really precise chipping, I'll pick my my brush and do it like I did around the hatches. Hopefully it's not too shiny right now. It still has a bit of like a varnish sheen on it, but I hope you can see the chipping on there. So yes, I did the chipping with the gray, some with a sponge on flat surfaces, and then precise chipping around details with a brush, all the same color. And then I went in with my red primer color, which in this case is the one I've been using a lot recently, which is Model Color German Camouflage Black Brown. And I used my brush, and I carefully added some red primer to the centers of the largest chips. Maybe like 1 out of 4 chips has the red primer on it. So I'll get my brush here so I can point a little bit better. So for example, on the rear bin here, maybe see there's some chipping kind of in this region here. And only one of the chips has some red primer, which is the one right there. I guess we'll look back at the hatch for the commander here. It's a good example. So there's some chipping, right, and you can see that only a couple of the actual chips have the red primer color inside them. It's important not to put the red primer inside every single chip, otherwise your weathering is going to look really, really overdone. Actually, I'll show you on the sides here. This will be a good example. So on the sides you can see I did some kind of like scrapes. Same lighter gray color, hit some scrapes, just like make it look like it's been going through some bush or something where it's been scratched up a little bit. So I've got some scrapes going there, and there's a little bit of red primer right there, and a little bit there, but mostly there's no red primer in these chips. On the back here I've got a couple of scrapes, but there's only a little bit of red primer right about there. So it's important not to put the red primer inside every single chip, because the chips that are just gray, or the scratches that are just a light gray color, look like some gentle wear and tear effects. But if you pick then the red primer color and put that inside, then you get like a really, really deep chip. And you want not every chip to be super deep. You want it to look like there's some wear and tear from where the crew's been walking around. So you use the lighter gray color for most of those. And if you really want some worn areas, like a couple of spots around the hatch, then I'll put some red primer there. But most of the overall chipping effects I did with sponge chipping on the top of the superstructure here don't have red primer, because that's just gentle wear and tear from the crew walking around. Same thing with the boxes. Like there's a little bit of chipping on the boxes, but there's only red primer around the edges, like basically around that edge right there, because that's where the crew would frequently like grab it to open it up. So that was the chipping effect. Two-tone chipping, very easy and very, very minor. And then I gave it a satin varnish. My satin varnish is a mix of about half and half. Probably a little bit more of this than that, but it's probably like 60-40 of these two, which is clear and flat clear. This is a little bit more flat than this one, so you mix them together, get like a nice satin varnish. And I thin it with Tamiya lacquer thinner, which is also what I was thinning all my other paints with. So I thin that down. I use probably about 75% thinner or so. Airbrushed on a couple of thin coats, and that gives me a nice satin varnish for the next stages, which are the oils. So for the oils, I first did a Pinwash. My Pinwash mixture was about a half and half mix of the two wilder colors here, which are basically black and brown, to get a nice dark brown color. And I'm thinning it with the wilder thinner. So I mix that up. I mix a half and half mix of the brown and the black to get a nice dark brown. Thin it down like 80% with the thinner until it's really, really thin, and then I just apply it as a Pinwash around all the details. So that's basically on this one, all the weld seams and the rivets on the front. I'll zoom you in a little bit so you can see a little bit better. So on the upper surfaces here, some of the dust of course kind of fills in the weld seams, but there's still some good examples of where you can see the Pinwash. So for that weld seam along the side right there, you can definitely see there's like a shadow around it, or like a darker color, and basically just pops out a little bit better. And also on the superstructure roof here, the weld seams, you can definitely see they look darker. That's the whole point of the Pinwash. You want to make some kind of fake shadow effects, which just kind of make the details pop out a little bit. So I just carefully apply it. There's a little bit of dust on here, let me get it. There we go. So carefully apply it using a very, very small brush. Like this one here, which is like a 10/0. So I'll use that and I'll carefully apply it around all the weld seams. And then in a couple of spots, I get a little bit of excess that kind of bleeds out. So what I do afterwards is after it's dried, the Pinwash is dried, I get a little bit of thinner, the same thinner I was using to thin down the oil paints. This thinner, which is not acrylic thinner, it's oil paint thinner. And then I just kind of wipe away the excess very, very gently. And that gets rid of it. It's pretty easy. And it makes all the details pop out a lot better. So you can see all the weld seams and the rivets on the front. It's a really, really good effect. And I also kind of did it, especially around the viewport there with the little, I kind of just applied it all over there to make that area more in shadow because it's kind of behind that bolted plate. Alright, so that was the Pinwash. After the Pinwash was done, I did not apply a varnish. People always ask me why I don't put a varnish between each step of my oil or enamel weathering. It's because I don't really have any issues with it, like later steps affecting the first ones. For example, a lot of the weld seam, or a lot of the Pinwashes in weld seams and around rivets, which are areas that I don't really get to when I'm actually just kind of blending out the dust effects later. So I don't really wipe it away. It's not an issue. So I didn't apply varnish, though if you want to, you could apply the same satin varnish just as like an insurance policy or whatever. And then, after I didn't put a varnish, but I could have, I went in with my oils to do the, oils and one enamel product, this stuff here, to do the, kind of like the dusty effects. So what I did first actually was I used this light blue patina color, which I like on Panzer Gray, and I did my kind of color modulation effect where I just kind of apply it in random areas, and I basically get like, when you do color modulation with the airbrush, you just get like differences in the color. That's basically what I did, but I just did it with oils afterwards. So I just kind of model the color around a little bit to get non-uniformities to the gray, because the gray is kind of one color and boring. That mostly got covered up by the oils on the top here, but I did some also on the sides. I also did some streaking with it, which is still visible, and especially on the top of the boxes on the back, the discoloration effect kind of shows through. So it mostly gets covered up, but it does kind of pay off. There's a couple spots where, like for example the hatch here, where the commander would sit, it's a little bit more blue than the rest. And then maybe the hatches in the front here, it's a little bit visible. It's kind of subtle. You don't really have to do it. I just like to because it's kind of fun. So that was my first step of the oils. For the oil like rendering effects, not including the Pinwash. And then I went in with the dust effects. So here I actually tried out for the first time the MIG ammo oil brushers. I'd never actually tried these before, and I usually use the Wilder ones, and I used one Wilder one here. This is a light buff color, it looks good for dust. And then I also have MIG ammo oil brusher dust and MIG ammo oil brusher Starship filth. And these are all just like, this is a light color, and this is like a medium color, and then this is like a dark color. And I basically just use them all in various locations. I just apply a little bit and kind of blend it out. I think I kind of started out with almost like a Pinwash, or sorry, not Pinwash, a dot filter effect, where I kind of put dots everywhere and blend them out as like initial build-ups, but then eventually I just started kind of doing, it's almost like you apply it and kind of blend it out, and just kind of like, it's almost like a filter, you kind of start to build up in different layers and areas, and that's what's given me the dusty effect overall. My thoughts on the oil brushers, actually, since I've never used it before, is that they're really, really good oil paints, but I got tired after a while of every single time I want to apply a little bit more. They're good for like a dot filter because you can just open it up, and then you're like, oh, let's put some dots, and you put some dots on, and then you put it back in. But I was doing like little bits where I apply a little dot, blend it out with my other brush, and then apply another dot and blend it out. And I got really tired of opening this up, putting a dot on, closing it up, and constantly having to like screw it closed and screw it open. So eventually I just put these out on a palette next to my Wilder ones like a normal oil paint. So yeah, I mean, they're all right. I just think that it would have been better to put them in a tube rather than in these mascara bottles. But the colors are good. So I use you can kind of see the three different colors I've chosen. So I've got the dust color, which is like a medium tone, and the Starship Filth, which is a darker tone. And you can see those. I'll use the roof as an example because it's very, very good. So you can see like darker colors around the viewport here and around the hatch right about there. And then kind of farther out you can see that dust color, which is the lighter of the oil brushers. And then a couple of spots kind of like over here you can see an even lighter color, and that's the wilder buff color. Or I think it's light buff. And so I kind of used all three colors to just get varying levels of dirtiness. I used the Starship Filth mainly around areas where it was really heavy, and then on the rest I just kind of used the dust color from MIG ammo and the wilder light buff color, intermittently just kind of getting a variation to a dusty effect. You can see that the areas I applied it heaviest were areas that see the least traffic, so the crew's kind of walking around on the top, so they kind of would blend, or not really blend, but kind of wear off and kind of just wipe away a lot of the dust. It wouldn't really build up here because it kind of get kicked around by the crew. So I still have some of it over here on the top, but it's not really heavy. But then areas where the crew kind of wouldn't walk, which is kind of like around this thing, because you wouldn't walk, you kind of give it a little bit of berth when you walk around it. So I built it all up around there. And also I put a lot of it around the hatch here just because that sees a lot of use. You can also see on the sides here, I've got the effect kind of streaking down really heavily over here because that's right next to the hatch, so it's going to all get washed down. And then I have it a little bit lighter on the front here, just some kind of streaks and stuff. Just streaking of the oil paints. So for the streaking or the blending, I just basically apply it, let it sit for like a minute or so. Sometimes I don't even let it sit because I don't really care. And then I'll use another brush that's lightly damp with the same wilder thinner, oil paint thinner. I usually use a brush kind of like this one here, which is a little bit larger. So this one's lightly damp with it, and then I'll kind of wipe it away and blend it out with this brush, which is not the same brush I'm using to apply it, which is this one. This will all be shown in the video once I get to finishing it and editing it. You can also see the dust all on the front here if it's not too shiny. There we go. Around the headlight you can see that's really kind of heavy around there. It gets a little more blended out over here where it's more exposed. On the front fender there, for example, there I get a good angle. You can see it's kind of really dark around there, and it kind of gets dustier, lighter around the outside. I'm just simulating it's a little more dirty there and a little more dusty kind of up to the outside. And you can also kind of see some build-up and streaks on the front there. Overall, it's looking pretty good, and you can also see the streaks on the streaks and build-up kind of on the lower areas of the front. So right now, that's basically where I'm at. You can see that all the weathering basically just ends at the right about there, and then from here on down, it's going to be all pigments and enamel products. I also want to try some of the Wilder Aqua line, which are kind of acrylics, but more like watercolors, honestly. I'll use those for streaking effects, mainly because I can apply those, and then I can apply enamels over top of it, and it won't damage the Aqualine effects because they're water-based, and enamels are not water-based, so they won't reactivate the Wilder Aqualine effect. So I don't even have to varnish between because I can basically use the Aqualine to put some streaks, and then I don't have to varnish it because the streaks won't get damaged when I apply enamels over top of that later, because the enamel thinner won't damage the Aqualine effects. So that's what I'm going to try. As for this effect here I showed you earlier, this is the Wilder grease. I just used it in a couple spots around the engine deck. You can see there's just like some grease right on here, and there's also some grease underneath the boxes there, which you can't see because I applied it and I was like, wow, that's some really good greasy effects. And then I put the box on top and I'm like, oops, I forgot about that. It's pretty funny though. You can kind of see it from certain angles, and it has like that effect has like a semi-gloss effect to it when it dries, so in a couple spots it kind of looks glossy. You can probably see it around the hatch there. It's pretty good. And also if I can get it in the light, yeah, you can see that area on the rear is kind of shiny, which looks good. It looks like it's greasy effects if it's shiny. So I applied that kind of over there, a couple spots on the top. especially around the hatches over here because that's where the fuel filler cap is, kind of underneath there. I guess this box is kind of in the way to keep taking it off to fill it up. I also applied some of the grease around the jack because it's kind of a greasy mechanism. And with that, that's basically where we're at right now. You can see that overall I'm pretty happy with it. I think it looks good. The dust on the roof looks pretty alright. I initially had it looking pretty good, and then I kind of started apply a little bit more, and I kind of ruined it, so I had to redo the whole roof area. But in the end, I think it looks pretty good. I'm very happy with the effect I've got on there, which looks basically like dust that's been kind of worn down. You can see that it almost has like a wear and tear effect, like pattern to it. It looks really, really good. I'm happy with that. And the two oil brusher colors. I think the colors are great. I just wish they were in a tube rather than those stupid little mascara bottles. You can also see some streaks kind of along the back there, around the hatch and stuff, where the crew would walk around most is where I put a lot of the dust. Yep. A couple things I'll talk about is the application of the dust. You can see that it's really, really heavy on the top of the superstructure there, but there's less of it on top of the boxes here. A little bit, but less, because nobody's going to walk on top of the boxes, so they're not really going to get any dust on top of them, apart from just a little bit kicked up, so that's why they're a little bit dusty. Same thing with the hatch here, actually. The hatch itself isn't dusty because when the crew is walking around the top of the tank, the hatch is going to be open. So the area that it is covering when it's open, right around there, and the top of the hatch itself are not actually going to see much walking, basically. They're not going to get worn down, and they're not going to get dusty. So that area is actually very clean, and the area that it would cover when open are very clean, but the areas around it, when you're walking into the hatch, are very, very dusty. Same kind of thing on this upper area here, this viewport. I kind of figured that they're not really going to walk on that, they're going to kind of walk around it. So I actually kept it very, very clean compared to the areas around it. Yep, and you can see on this side of the superstructure, it's a lot less dusty. It's just like gentle streaks overall. But then on the other side, it's kind of like the same up here, but then it gets really dusty over here because that's where all that stuff's going to get washed down from the hatch where the crew's walking around the most. And same kind of thing, you can see I put some dust right around there because that's going to get washed down from the crew accessing the rear hatch. So that's kind of how I think about applying the chipping and the dusty effects. I think about areas that the crew would walk around the most, and I also think about areas that would not be accessible when the crew's walking around. So like the top of the hatch here, there's no chipping on it either. No chipping over here as well, because the crew's not going to walk on it. Yep, so that's kind of where it is at this point. I think it's very, very good. I guess I forgot to mention I also detail painted the wood on the axe, but that was pretty minor. Yeah, I mixed up some paints for that. It was kind of a my mix for painting wood is still kind of unknown. I kind of do a different effect every single time. Someday I'll get something I'm happy with, but right now it's kind of just, I'm still experimenting with it, I guess. But yes, hope you enjoyed my little ramble here. I hope you learned something new. Or if you're just curious about this, you can ask me any questions about it. And I don't know when it's going to be, the video's going to be, sorry, I don't know when the video's going to be done, honestly, because I'm very busy with university work, but it takes me a lot of time to edit these videos because I have a lot of footage I need to edit it all and go through the voiceover and stuff. But all I really have to do left for the actual tank itself is the effect on the lower hull. And that shouldn't take too long. I don't know when it's going to be, the video's going to be done, but hopefully in a month or so, but I can't promise anything. So there it is. Hope you like it. I'm very happy with it so far. And yeah, I'm excited that I'm doing something that's not whitewashed, because that's everything I've been doing recently has a whitewash camo on it. So I actually did no hairspray chipping on this one at all. But mostly I'm happy with the oil effects. They look great. So yes, thanks for watching, guys. Like I said, any questions or comments, post them on below. And yeah, I will see you in the next video. I'm not sure when that will be up. Yeah, but I will see you then. Thanks for watching, guys, and huge thanks to my Patreon and PayPal supporters. You guys are awesome, and you helped me buying all these weathering products that I'm trying out. Tanks like this, and I'll be showing you in videos soon. So, yes, thanks for watching for maybe the 4th time. Thanks for watching, and yeah, happy modeling.